Welcome back to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson, and today I am joined by Joseph LaMagna. We are going to be diving in. This is an annual tradition on this pod, I think. I think we did it last year. I know we did it at least 2 years ago, but I try and do this every year. We are going to dive in and come up with a couple players we think might break out in 2025. So we've gotten to the end of this year. All the results are in, all the statistics are in, and we're gearing up for 2025 on the PGA Tour. And I guess we could do all tours. I don't know if you have any, Joseph, any live breakout candidates. I think maybe the Thomas Pieters move to the Four Aces might finally unlock that potential we've been dying to see since the Ryder Cup years. But we came up with 5 breakout players, and we will kind of run through them. There are varying degrees of players. Joseph, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this. I don't remember for sure if we did this last year, but I have a feeling that might not have aged as well as probably would have liked to based on the performance of the Camerons this year. So I'm hoping we do better in 2025.
Listen, we don't look back in anger, as the great Oasis once said. We do not look back and think about all of our past transgressions. This is strictly an outward approach. You know, you can't allow the past to, influence how you're predicting the future. And I've got a couple things that I always monitor. I always monitor birdies. I'm a huge believer in birdies. I believe you can coach away bogeys. You can't teach birdies. So
I think there's something to that, by the way. As you're smiling, but I think that's legit, not just.
I'm dead serious. This is like you always watch. As a career mid-am, I always joke with my mid-am buddies. We are great at making like 15 pars. And how the other 4 holes shake out really determines if it's a good day or a bad day.
Why, you playing 19 holes?
Or 14 pars. 14 pars. The king of safe pars, and when you play with the very talented college kids, you see a different gear sometimes where you're like, well, I can't make 8 birdies on a fairly consistent basis. I can't go out and make 8 birdies a lot. And it's like, well, if you could just figure out how to coach away those bogeys, that's the easy stuff. It's hard to make the birdies though. Anyways, let's get into it. Joseph, who's first on your list?
I went with 5 different golfers from kind of 5 different levels and stages of their career. So I don't know. I have one that I can start with. I think the only opening comments I had, Andy, is when I was putting this together, a couple things that I think you have to keep in mind. And I'm curious if your philosophy with this is the same. Age is massive, right? If you're giving me a 30-year-old golfer that you think is going to break out, like, I need to understand what you think is going to change. Like, not to say that you can't get better at that age, but generally there's a natural progression when you're younger. So
Could I say 30-year-old Justin Thomas switches to a broom putter, breaks out, becomes an average putter, and that could be how they break out?
If there's a catalyst, yeah, right? I mean, Victor Hovland's kind of an example where he was still young, but in 2023, he fixed the chipping a little bit, but really what he credits with a lot of his improved performance was the course management, and that had a significant impact on his on-course performance. So if there's some kind of catalyst like that, I'm here for it. But generally, I think players, if we're talking about breakout candidates, it's got to be somebody who's in a little bit more of a ripe age to break out.
Let's just I think like if we were going to deem some breakout candidates from last year in a couple buckets, I think like the clear top of the game breakout was Xander Schauffele.
Yeah, no doubt.
Who would you throw into the kind of next bucket?
You're putting me on the spot. I'd probably need to.
Sahith Theegala would be a great example of going from kind of a top 40 player to a top 20 player.
I mean, you could almost put Tyrrell. Tyrrell's been a really good player, but he kind of took things to a little bit of a different level this year.
I completely agree. Aaron Rye would be a great example of a breakout player where
Aaron
he
Rye's
went from, probably like a top 100-ish player to a top 30 player in the game.
I would say Davis Thompson is a good example.
Davis Thompson
took a pretty big jump and won on the PGA Tour. I would describe him as an example. Yeah, those would be a couple of them that come to mind off the top of my head.
Steven Yeager would be another one.
Yeah,
I think that ascended, and that was kind of like it was more of like an 18-month ascension. I think like there are always tea leaves that you can start to like pick out on how players, and like someone like Nick Dunlap, I don't think that really counts as a breakout. He's just really freaking good and started playing professional golf, right?
I have him on my breakout list, but
I think he could break out from last year.
Yeah, okay.
But like you can't count him last year as a breakout player because he just is really good and played professional golf, right? Does that make sense?
I kind of get what you're going for, but I think he took his profile to another level. I understand he didn't have the opportunity to do that before. I still think he had a mini breakout last year, but if we want to talk about him for a second, age was a huge part of.
Let's we're starting with Nick Dunlap. I completely agree with where you're going with this, where I think you're going with this.
Yeah, I wasn't planning to start with him, but age is a huge part of this. We're here. And the other part I think that will be a through line is speed. And I just am not as likely to deem somebody a breakout candidate if they're consistently giving up distance to the field. Nick Dunlap he has plenty of speed and he is an elite iron player, which are some of the things that translate at the highest level. Like a couple of the notes I had on Dunlap, first off, he hasn't even turned 21 yet. So in terms of the development he could go through over the next couple of years, I mean, he could develop for 3 years and he'll still be on the young end of the spectrum. He gained strokes in a lot of big events, and that's something that I think is a pretty strong signal. I have noted that he was 9th in the field with his approach play at Memorial, which is about as strong as fields get. 5th in the field on his approach at the St. Jude. Again, top 50 players on the PGA Tour, most of the best players in the world. When a golfer is that young, has that kind of speed, and is gaining strokes on approach against the best players in the world, there's a pretty strong signal in there that he's a real talent.
I think the other thing when you highlight those two courses and how they might differ from your run-of-the-mill PGA Tour course, he's doing that on courses like St. Jude is notorious for mid-irons. It is a mid-iron golf course. Memorial is one of the toughest tee to green tests, and there are a lot of mid-irons in that test. So when you think about like a Nick Dunlap, to me, like a Nick Dunlap breakout is he's ascending into the top 20 maybe in the world, and also with that is major championship golf. And I think those two golf courses, that mid-iron test is a big part of major championship golf, where you are going to have longer approaches. And the difference between leading the field and strokes gained approach on a driver wedge course is way different than leading the field or being at the top in the top tier of an elite field at a golf course that demands mid and long irons. Like that is a whole different skill, and that's where real great iron players, and this is where like I struggle a lot with like the strokes gained metric in just an aggregate, is that there are so few golf courses that are very demanding still because of how far the tee shot goes.
And how different strengths of fields are. You can't just lump them all together. Gaining strokes at the Rocket Mortgage now is completely different from gaining strokes at Memorial. Andy, tying together something that we talked about at the outset of this, Nick Dunlap missed the cut by 1, I believe, at the Masters this year. Gained significant strokes with his approach play, right? One of the most demanding long iron tests. He also had 3 double bogeys that week over 2 days and missed the cut on the number I think it was by 1. That's the kind of thing, as you're saying, you can coach away. Like he's going to get more familiar with places and learn how to get some of those double bogeys out of his range. he's showing that he's making a bunch of birdies at Augusta his first time out there, like, and he's 20. I have very high expectations for what Nick Dunlap can do over the next 12 to 24 months.
I think this gets talked about a little bit, but I'd love to see like a statistical breakdown at some point. But what is the advantage you gain as in a second year as a tour professional for not going through, like going through these golf courses for a second time, seeing a golf course, not being the first time you play at Memorial, not being the first time you play at Riviera, which like we now look at the last really like 20 years of Riviera, it's got a skew to be one of the oldest average age winter stops on tour, right? So like, what are you gaining every year? Like, to me, the things that you would like think statistically you would improve at is on the greens, putting, like understanding where putts break, understanding the nuances of hole locations, because a lot of times hole locations are the same. I think like double bogey avoidance probably goes up because you understand places that you can't miss more, or bogey avoidance maybe would go up. I think like also probably, and I don't know, like you would know this more, strokes gained around the green and strokes gained approach would understanding where to miss around greens impact your it would actually impact your around the green play, right?
Yeah, more than the approach play. I mean, because it treats all 20-yard chips the same. So if you're short-sided, it gives it the same expected value. To your question there, that could be a good analysis to look at over the next couple of weeks. I think the putting you wouldn't see as much as you might intuit, because putting tends to be very noisy. And even if you know where an 8.5 footer is breaking versus the year before, actually realizing that gain isn't going to be that reliable. I could be wrong, but that's my intuition. I think you'd see it a lot in both approach and around the green, especially with grass type. I think that's the biggest thing that I hear from a lot of young golfers is understanding like what kind of chip shot should I be playing around the greens dependent on the grass type, and understanding the settings of their wedges. I remember talking to a guy who had just gotten onto tour a couple years ago, and I was asking him about grass types, and he was like, it's all chipping for him.
Yeah, like absolutely.
So
it's techniques. You have to approach Bermuda. I mean, if you have really good chipping technique, it works on all grasses. But developing that technique, understanding how balls are going to react, its first bounces, like it's even like if you're someone who grew up playing golf in California or a northern hemisphere, when you play on Bermuda, like when you're chipping, you don't realize that you need to look at like the grain of where you're going to land the ball. Because if you're landing it into the grain, it might check up a little bit more. If you're landing it down grain, you might not get that check that you're expecting. And these are the differences between hitting it to 3 feet and hitting it to 6, which makes a huge difference on your up and down percentage. So I completely agree with the chipping, familiarizing yourself to grass types. Like we see it every year. Like there are special West Coast putting specialists. When you go through the West Coast and you putt on the POA, like there are absolutely players that putt better on that. I remember for years, Brant Snedeker, who was a great putter, but like his West Coast putting stats were incredible. And a lot of it was that the way he stroked and hit putts, he hit them with a little bit more authority. And when you get in the afternoons on some POA that can get ropey, sometimes POA is as good as it gets. I want to be clear, like some of the best putting surfaces in the world are POA. But, like DJ always putted really well on the West Coast, which is like surprising given he's from South Carolina. But then you've got guys like Sam Burns who have won almost all of his events that he's won have been on Bermuda, right? I was looking, a player on my list, and I doubt he'll be on your list, is Joe Highsmith.
Not on my list.
So he's a young player. Last year he was a rookie. And I think last year being a rookie was extraordinarily hard. You did not know when you were playing. You with the rejiggering of the tour, you had more veterans and high priority players playing more regular events than ever. Like they were almost mandatory. So what we saw was less and less starts for rookies. It was an extremely difficult year, and I think like he had some good moments. He was in contention, had some bad Sundays, but then he came into the fall. He was well outside the 125. I think he was around 164, and he worked his way up into 110. And in the fall, he finished. It's a diverse set of golf courses. He played 6 events. 5 of them he finished in the top 16. He was a factor on Sunday at a lot of them. Huge college player at Pepperdine, one of the best in college golf just a couple years ago. And he was 6th in birdie average as a rookie. So again, looking at that birdie average, gets to go around these golf courses for a second time, guaranteed starts. He knows where he's playing. I think this is a huge, it could be a year where he goes from, I think he's like around 110 in the FedEx Cup this year. He could be a top 70 player next year.
I like this call. I mean, he played way better in the fall than he did.
Way better.
Towards the beginning of the year. It'd be interesting to hear what his perspective is on that. His putting was pretty bad all year, which is kind of a positive sign, Andy. If the ball striking is good, right? Like the ball striking, he gained strokes on his approach a lot of weeks. So he's an interesting name to keep an eye on. Has a little bit of distance off the tee, decent ball speed. So we'll see. I don't mind that call at all.
Young.
24?
Yeah.
24. Yeah. Can I give you a young name?
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited to see what Tom McKibbin's got. Tom McKibbin is 21. He's about to turn 22. Northern Ireland, Hollywood. I don't know if he'll be the best player to ever come out of Hollywood, but we'll see.
Do you think he's the Pavone of this year? He would have been a breakout player last year.
Matthew Pavone is 31? Like I think we got to keep that in mind. Like Tom McKibbin hasn't turned 22 yet. He was a very steady performer on the DP World Tour this year. He played in 25 events on the DP World Tour, not counting majors. Had 9 top 10s. I think missed just 4 cuts. He made cuts in both majors that he played this year, the US Open and the Open Championship. He was on the wrong side of the split at Troon, which was a huge wave split, and he still made the cut. Not even 22 yet, has a lot of speed, really good iron player. The iron play kind of dropped off towards the end of the year, but I think there's some flashes in here. He shows some signs of being somebody that could develop for the next 2 years, and we'll see how his game translates at strong fields. I mean, again, the 2 made cuts in majors, like even at Pinehurst, gained strokes both off the tee and approach. That was his major championship debut. I think there's something to keep an eye on here.
Just from insiders I've spoken to, game might be better suited for America. Hits it high. Might not have that much trajectory control, and when PGA Tour golf courses are kind of about hitting it far and high. That is a general strategy type of golf that lends itself well in America. So yeah, I think my hesitation always with young Europeans is going to be this is a big change. It's a hard thing. You're moving away. You're far away, and you're like the outsider on a tour that's predominantly full of Americans who have played golf together for a very long time and have known each other for a really long time. So I think that is one of the underlying, and let's be clear, he probably knows Rory McIlroy the best of anyone being from Hollywood. I don't know if that's actually true, but probably some reasonable. They aren't ever going to be playing the same tournaments. They're going to play maybe 4 or 5 of the same tournaments. They'll play in Palm Beach together. But he is not going to be, teeing it up at the on the same schedule. So I think that is always my concern with young Europeans, is just assimilating to the American game.
Yeah, that's a concern. And I'd say some of the weaknesses in the iron play. I mean, the beginning of the year was really good, and then it dropped off. And in previous years, it hasn't been great. So that's going to be a huge thing to keep an eye on. He's going to have the speed, but can he hit his irons well enough to take it to the next level? We'll see. Do you have another name?
Yeah, I got another name here. I'm gonna, and this was, I think, one that you could kind of say broke out this year. I think I expect him to take another leap here this year and become one of the best players in the world. That is Akshay Bhatia. Akshay, if you boil down what happened this year, why he became all of a sudden prevalent on basically every leaderboard, like all sorts of leaderboards, it was simple. He switched to the broom putter and turned his biggest weakness into a strength. So he picked up just about a shot on the greens from last year. He went from negative a half shot to plus 0.345. So 0.85 gain in almost a full shot per round better on the greens than the year before because of the broom. But if you look at his numbers, he actually regressed off the tee, which was surprising. Like, when you look at it, he regressed basically off the tee and approach. And I have a theory that he spent a lot of time getting comfortable with the broom putter, spent a lot of time working on his putting. And sometimes with golf, what happens when you spend a lot of time working on something else, other things can slip just a little. And if he picks up basically the third shot that he lost from tee to green, that he is all of a sudden a world beater, because he'd be a very good off the tee player, above average approach player, and a really strong putter. Like, that is a great recipe. And I think it's one that could see him be a top 15 player in the world.
I mean, I like the Akshay call, especially given his age. It wouldn't shock me if some of the drop off in the ball striking is actually just from playing stronger fields, and the way that that's showing up in the data versus actually getting worse in those categories. So that'd be something interesting to look into. Maybe it's just a lefty thing, but the way he hits shots off the tee does kind of remind me of Bubba. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of interested to see if he has success at similar courses that Bubba had. So like, I'm excited to see him play Riviera, and he made the cut at the Masters this year. That was his Masters debut, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was. So, like, I actually think that's kind of an interesting golf course for Akshay. If the iron play continues to improve and he has these different shots in his bag, the courses where you need those shots, like Augusta, I think he's kind of a sneaky candidate, not to get in the mix necessarily next year at Augusta, but to be somebody that 5 years from now we look back like, hey, he's put together a pretty good track record of this course.
Right now around the greens, he's basically tour average. He's basically a 0-0 player. You could see a realm of possibility with him, which is rare, and he's still young. I mean, like, he should be a senior in college, is like the other thing about Akshay. Like, imagine if he was in PGA Tour U, what we'd be talking about, but he's been playing pro golf for 4 years, basically. But he's one of those rare players where you could see someone who could be a top 30 player in every statistical category. That, that kind of reminds me of?
Who?
Xander Schauffele. Like, where all of a sudden you start to look at it and it's like, okay, if this guy just makes some small incremental gains each year, that is the skill set of a top 5 player in the game. When the thing that I think every great player really has in common is that they don't have real holes in their game. And you can say, oh, Scotty's putter is a hole. Well, he's got such extraordinary other attributes that he can afford a little bit of a hole. And that's like probably the best place to have a hole.
Yes.
But like, when you start to look at like players that can be great players, it is not like we need to turn this guy from a below average approach player into a great approach player. It's, we need to take this guy from, 30th, 40th in approach play to 20th. And from, 25th and off the tee to 15th, and then all of a sudden you've got the ingredients if the putter stays at above average tour player level.
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning Scotty. I think something to always think about a little bit, especially where we've, I think, trained our brains to be very strokes gained focused. Thinking about strokes gained approach and around the green together, I think can be a useful exercise where if you don't hit a great approach shot, you can generally bail yourself out with a really strong around the green shot. So Scotty always kind of has that working in his favor. I think with Akshay, what you would want to look at is, okay, he's not necessarily elite iron player. Like, can he bail himself out around the greens when he doesn't hit a great approach shot? And his around the green play, like you mentioned, is pretty much tour average. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops in those two skill areas.
I think that around the green play is something that like you are going to get better at as you age because of what you just laid out earlier about grass types. It's like grass types, technique, understanding, and the more it's really, that is one of the few, I would say one of the few areas in the game where experience is just like so important still. Is just understanding the more shots you play, the more situations you're in, just lend itself so much to around the green play, you know. All right, let's talk about our partner, Good Walk Coffee. They are an awesome partner. We have our blends with Good Walk Coffee. You can buy Fried Egg Golf Coffee. It is delightful. It is a delicious light to medium roast. But also, we teamed up with them for a perfect holiday gift. As many of you, almost all of you, probably know that I co-host another podcast called The Shotgun Start. It's another golf podcast. We talk a lot about current events there. I host it with Brendan Porath of the Fried Egg. And we partnered up to create a limited edition Shotgun Start and Good Walk Coffee holiday gift box. Now, in this gift box, it includes a bag of our holiday Peruvian blend coffee. This is delicious. It's a delightful coffee. A Winston Collection head cover featuring our one and only producer, PJ, and a stainless steel tumbler. Great for drinking coffee, great for drinking wine. You know, recently I used this tumbler for a little walk. I took the dog for a walk, had a beer. It was like 5 p.m. Don't judge me. You know, it was a nice little walk around the neighborhood with a beer. Those tumblers are nice at concealing what you're drinking. The Peruvian blend, this coffee, this holiday blend, is created by female growers in Peru and gives wintry notes of dark chocolate, chestnuts, and brown sugar. It's perfect for the holidays. It's all wrapped up in a custom box, and let us take care of the gifting for you this season. You could just send this and it would be a great gift. You need to order by the 18th of December. That's the last date to order in time for the holidays, and you can do it at proshop.thefriedegg.com. This is an awesome gift, and thanks to our friends at Good Walk for our partnership. Let's get back to Joseph.
All right, I have three more. Do you want? There's at least I have a high profile one that I definitely want to get to, and then two younger guys.
Let's keep going. We'll keep going. We can.
All right,
got all the time. There's no time limits here.
I think Will Zalatoris for me. I know that some people might say he can't be a breakout candidate because
I think he can.
In my mind, Will Zalatoris might be like the most underrated player right now by like official world golf rankings or like a data golf ranking or FedEx Cup. He's 63rd in the world right now in the official world golf rankings, and he's just dealt with a lot of injury. If we get Will Zalatoris back and healthy, we know that he's one of the top players in the world, especially on demanding setups where you really have to flash that elite iron play. Andy, 2021 was his first year playing like a full schedule of majors, basically. Since that time, he has 3 top 10s at Augusta. He missed a year. So he's 3 for 3 top 10s at Augusta since 2021. That's as many as any other player has. And that's with Will missing all of 2023 with injury. He's become basically one of the best golfers at Augusta. He's second in strokes gained per round in the Masters since 2021. Only Scotty's better than he is. And then there's a pretty big drop off after Will. Almost won a couple of majors already. Like he was close to in the same year at Southern Hills and at Brookline. Feels like somebody where if he's healthy, which he really hasn't been the last year and a half, but I think he's starting to feel better, it sounds like. I think he could be a top 10 player in the world. And that's maybe a term we throw around too casually. I know I've been guilty of that, but I do think Will Zalatoris is truly a top 10 player in the world when he's healthy.
The health is the thing, right? And I guess my big question, where we saw the leap with Zalatoris, was he came back from an offseason with more speed. Sean Martin wrote an article about this while it happened on PGAtour.com, but he had picked up 15 yards or so off the tee, and it really, like, you know, when you pick up that yardage, it just unlocks your other skills even more. It just makes Will Zalatoris an even more deadly iron player because he's 15 yards closer. And I think the thing that, if you look deep into the numbers last year, he came out of the gates pretty hot. Like he played really well at Riv. He had like a pretty good early season. I think he had some injury issues and some complications in the back half of the year. But even early in the year, the speed wasn't really there yet. And I think that speed is the difference between that top 10 type player and the top 30 player we saw before the speed increase. So to me, it so is health dependent, and beyond just like staying healthy, it's being healthy enough with the changes in his golf swing. And like, this is a big question I have. Do the changes in his golf swing impact the ability for him to swing and produce the speed numbers that we saw when he was at his best? Because that would be where my question marks with Zalatoris are.
But yes, I'm with you. But what I think is encouraging is that towards the end of this year, his speed numbers kind of got back up. And so he finished, like you mentioned, second at Riviera this year. And that was without his speed really being
no
back.
Speed.
He finished T9 at the Masters this year, probably questionable health, and didn't have his speed back. So if he's doing this without the speed, and now the speed numbers are starting to come back, if he says going into 2025 that he feels fully healthy, he's somebody like, I'm seeing him around like 30 to 41, 40 to 1 to win the Masters. Like, I think you can do worse than that. That feels like we might be talking about Will Zalatoris as one of the front runners if he comes out at the start of 2025 healthy.
Absolutely. I think, like, you know, if I talked about players of this generation, that I think it's always interesting at golf tournaments, who you follow. Like, you like set out with intentions of following people, and then you have other people you have no intention of following. Will Zalatoris is someone that I just always gravitate towards to watch, because it's an experience. That the ball striking, the level of talent from tee to green is so high. And it is, I think, like, when you're talking about people that can match him tee to green, it is about as short of a list as you would get. Like, I think, like, when he's cooking, it's pretty much Scotty and maybe Victor. Morikawa doesn't have the gas pedal he has.
No.
Is like
Irons.
The thing.
Yeah.
It is like Morikawa just like, it is truly an extraordinary. Like, he is one of the best players to watch play live golf in the world, and so I really hope that he is back. He's got a swagger about him. He's got like a little bit of I guess I can swear on this. He's got a little fuck you in his game, like where like he knows he's good. And like, that cockiness to me is like such an important skill for a world-class player. Like, he's had his near misses, and I don't think there is a shred of self-belief issue with him. Like, you see a lot of players that come up short a lot of times and have heartbreaking losses, that being a big problem. I do not think that it is the slightest issue with his kind of mental makeup.
The last thing I'll mention about Will that I don't think should go underrated is his course management. He's been very much at the forefront of optimal strategy, right? Of hitting approach shots aggressive to conservative targets, right? Like that's the line that often gets used as it should.
He's the OG decade disciple.
Yeah. I think one thing I've always like laughed at a little bit.
Told if you've heard that before.
I've heard not as much recently, but I used to hear it all the time. I sometimes see people tweet like strokes gain numbers in majors, and they talk about how Will Zalatoris elevates his game in majors versus in regular events. But some of that is how demanding the golf course is and how they let you separate yourself, but also that those important course management principles will materialize more on setups where short siding yourself's terrible, right? Like Augusta National, Will Zalatoris gets to really separate himself, not just with his elite iron play, but with his course management. So that's something I'd always keep in mind with him. If he's healthy, he's just a weapon in all facets, maybe minus the short range putting and he's not an elite short game artist, but just so good with his irons that I would never discount him.
I'll never forget, I had dinner with Jeff Ogilvy once, and he said to me, the biggest shame in professional golf is that fans don't get to see players consistently do everything they can do because the venues on a regular basis don't demand them. Like that's always stuck with me. And it's why venues matter. Everybody that says they don't, like the great venues demand a different level of shot making and have a sterner set of consequences when that shot making is not met.
All right, you want to keep it rolling?
Yeah, let's keep going. All right, I got one. He's 31, which is going to immediately turn you off to him.
Maybe he's got injuries or something, and there's a catalyst. What we got?
Kurt Kitayama.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So Kurt Kitayama is just a statistical anomaly. I think he finished like 70th in the FedEx Cup, 74th in the FedEx Cup. But when you zoom in, he was 16th in off the tee and 10th in strokes gained approach. Truly elite numbers. Like there are not many guys in the people that rank in the top 20 of those two categories are like the best golfers in the world. Now, what Kurt Kitayama finished 171st in putting. Like, so one of the worst putters in the world. But I'm buying when you're elite off the tee and approaching the green, you are better than 74th. He's not the 74th best player on the PGA Tour statistically. And I don't buy that that's there. He was 28th in strokes gained total. So like clear discrepancy with where he finished. So I think just like a couple more putts go in this year. Like if he got to 120 in putting, he'd be probably playing at Eastlake.
Two thoughts on, I don't have a ton of thoughts on Kitayama, but I have two right off the top. One, he always shows up in some of the advanced accuracy numbers I have as he's a sprayer.
Yeah, he's complete sprayer.
And that is a limiting factor, right? Like it doesn't always show up in strokes gained like it should, but when you're spraying the ball way offline and you're long, he's kind of got the Bryson profile a little bit where when it gets offline, like there are certain golf courses that are just going to kick his butt. One note in the positive category, I'm not going to try to get into the business of ranking golf instructors too much, but I believe he's recently been working with Chris Como, and I do like a lot of what comes out of sessions with Chris Como.
Some more speed.
Yeah, and like gaining it through technique. He just seems to have the right mindset for how he approaches the golfers that he's instructing. I think that's a legitimate thing to keep an eye on, right? I mean, Xander went to Como and got a lot better. You can find examples of players who have done better and worse for every coach, but
Bryson?
I do think, yeah, I think that's actually a pretty interesting angle, especially because I think for a lot of this year, Kitayama was actively changing things, which might, if he goes into 2025 with some of those changes solidified, then maybe that's a catalyst, Andy, to take his game to another level. So I'm not sure I'm with you, but I think there are at least reasons to believe that he can ascend.
I mean, like you think, I'm not saying he's going to win a major. I'm just saying he's not the 74th best player on the PGA Tour.
I agree.
Like
to win at Bay Hill.
I know.
He did. He did.
I just think to me, like he profiles as someone with like the PGA Tour courses and the way they're set up.
Torrey Pines.
Yeah, like there are a lot of courses that fit this profile, even if he sprays it. There are a lot of great places to play on the PGA Tour as a sprayer.
He's basically Luke List.
Yes. And he's 30. His nickname in college, he went to UNLV. His nickname in college was The Project because like the members, I guess apparently the members of the course that they were at were like, we don't see it with this kid. Like he's just not good. So I think he's like one of those like kind of late bloomers in general. I think like this is the thing, like why age is a little bit different than other sports. We aren't projecting out NBA players where age is a huge thing and everybody's like falling in love with Dalton Connect. And it's like, okay, Dalton Connect's 24.
Basketball player for the record.
Yeah. He's playing on the Lakers and he's shooting threes. He's been impressive, but it's like, okay, a lot of these other guys, I'll take over Dalton Connect in 4 years, or 5 years with 19-year-old. I think the Bulls have a 19-year-old. It's like he scored 20 the other night. And it's like, well, what's he look like in 5 years? And that's what Dalton Connect is now. And it's a great fit for the Lakers. But with golf, you kind of like, for most of these guys, you have like 3 good years, really. Like 3 years make your career. The outliers have 10, 15, 20 years. 3 years, like where are your best 3 years? And to me, Kurt Kitayama might not have had his best 3 years as a tour pro.
I mean, he's been getting better too, Andy. Yeah. So if his best year is next year, like that is not out of the realm of possibilities. And like you're mentioning with the ball striking numbers, like I don't think he's going to get to the point where he's a consistent top player, but he could spike, like he could win a big event.
10th in approach to the greens, nuts.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that's looks like it's in pretty weak tournaments, but I hear you. All right, I've got 2 more.
I mean, all he has to do is like win an event, and he's in Eastlake this year.
I was gonna say all you gotta do is win 2 events. You're saying that like it's nothing.
I step back from that. As I was saying it, I had taken a step too far, a half step too far.
All right, I got 2 more names. Really interested in what you think of this first one. Some friends of the program are really high on this kid, notably Lawrence Donegan and Mike Clayton, Friday Golf Pod guests, Elvis Smiley.
Oh, all right. European tour.
He young, 22, and most of his results.
Did you watch any of the Australian stuff?
I did. Yeah.
He was good. He looked good.
That's where I'm going with this. So, I mean, the last few years of his career, I mean, he's really young, but it hasn't been anything too notable. And then bang, starting this October, he got hot. And in his last 7 starts, he has 6 top 10s. Now, most of these are the PGA Tour Australasia, which is not that strong of fields, but he did win the Australian PGA, which was very impressive win. He was in the final group with Cam Smith, and that's a golfer that I know he has a relationship with and I'm sure looks up to, like stood toe to toe with him and took him down. He's got a lot of pop, and I do respect the opinions of the friends of the program here. They think like this is potential Adam Scott type of trajectory, and it's a long ways away from that. Like that's the part I want to call out. Like,
I love the optimism.
I hear you.
Adam Scott was out on tour when he was 18.
That's the part we got to keep in mind
He
here
was
with
like
age.
playing. He was like contending in massive events at 19.
I'm with you. I mean, he's older than Tom McKibbin, right? Who's done a lot more already than Elvis Smiley has. But I do think this, if the breakout's going to happen, we should probably see it this year because he's going to be playing DP World Tour. And those are fields that are a clear step below PGA Tour signature fields, clearly, and even non-signature. So if Elvis Smiley is going to be a good golfer, we should see it in 2025.
Yeah, I don't hate that. All right, let's talk about Stripe. Our friends at Stripe. This is one of our longest partners. I was so excited when they reached out about partnering because it's easy to partner with companies you love. I'm especially thankful to them this holiday season. We have transactions going on in our pro shop and people buying our membership. And you know what? I know I don't have to worry about stuff because Stripe handles all of that and never have had an issue in our entire now 6 years working with them. So they are the global payments leader. Stripe serves more than 2 million businesses of all sizes, like us, and global giants like Alaska Airlines, Hertz, and the PGA. It powers 1% of the total global GDP. That's a staggering number. Stripe learns from trillions of transactions and puts those revenue-growing insights to work for businesses like ours or big businesses like Alaska Airlines. Companies that use Stripe's optimized checkout suite saw a revenue uplift of 11.9% on average by intelligently serving up the right payment method to the right customer, converting to their local currency and adapting the perfect experience to any device they shop on. I'm telling you, that stuff makes a huge difference. Just making it easy for people to pay will uplift your conversion. They also have a great billing product. They work with over 300,000 businesses using this billing product. We use this. We're one of those 300,000 businesses. And that's more than anybody else. And you can do something like a monthly subscription, a yearly subscription like we have, usage-based billing, invoicing, or anything in between. So if you're interested in looking into how Stripe can help your business, and it definitely can, visit stripe.com. Here's a question. Do you think there's still breakout potential? I have him on my list for Davis Thompson to keep going.
Absolutely. Why even are you guarded there with your optimism?
So I have him on my list. He's obviously 34th. And like my question is like, do you see a world where Davis Thompson's one of the 20 best players in the world? Because that's where he has to break out to. And I think it's like a good question. And because like you get to a certain level, and I think like that's like almost like, you know, every level up you go is so hard. Like, you know, I think about a guy like Sepp Straka. I mean, he's been kind of floating in this like 20 to 50 range of a player for probably 3 years now. And I don't see any more upward mobility for him. Like, I think he's where he is. And he's probably got 1 or 2 more years. This is spoken from someone a couple of years, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, on this very topic of this podcast, said Sepp Straka is better than he is playing. You know, he was a breakout candidate a couple of years ago. I think I was a year early on him. But anyways, like, I don't think there's any more room for Sepp Straka. But Davis Thompson, I believe in. And this is strictly based off of performances at the US Open. And it goes back to like, he contended at Winged Foot as an amateur. This year, he finished in the top 10 at Pinehurst. And to me, like someone who's contended, who's like played, who's been a real figure in 2 US Opens.
What was the? I don't think he contended at Winged Foot.
He was the first round leader.
Okay, he missed the cut.
I know, but he was the first round leader as an amateur.
Are we calling that? All right. Maybe we're calling that contending.
Like, I think he was relevant. He missed the cut, but he was on the leaderboard. Like, I just place stock in these things.
I'm with you on Davis Thompson overall.
So anyways, like I think Davis Thompson could be a top 15 player in golf. If he gets there, it's so hard to get there. And this is where, like, at this point, like, once somebody gets to, okay, he finished 34th in the FedEx Cup, what's a breakout from there? Like, it's got to be like, can he be a top 15 player?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I don't know that FedEx Cup is always going to be where.
He won the John Deere.
That's what I was going to say. Like, he won the John Deere, which gave him a bunch of points. So, like, that's why he's third. There's a lot of room to go up. Like, in my mind, if he finishes 30th next year, but those finishes come in more high profile events, like, that can qualify as breaking out a little bit. And as much as we like to dunk on the John Deere and other events like that are weak fields, which they are, he still looked. He played very, very well.
He blew out the John Deere.
Like, that.
That's another aspect of the way I think. Like, there are not, like, he won by, I think, like 5 or 6. It wasn't
4.
close.
He won by 4. Yeah.
All Sunday, he was just breezing through.
That, and again, I think the top 10 at Pinehurst shows a lot of promise. So
and
I'm with
first
you.
round. We'll always have the first round at Wingfoot too.
I'll give that some merit. I was too dismissive of that. Last name I have, Andy. I think Rasmus Hojgaard is an interesting name to keep an eye on. He had a very solid year this year. Notably won the Irish Open, took Rory down in the pretty dramatic final round. But Rasmus is somebody who's kind of won at every level. He's still 23. He was a great amateur. He's won in these different, he's been on the DP World Tour for a little bit, pretty much has won every year, steadily gotten better, a lot of pop off the tee, and he's gained strokes on his approach pretty much every event going back to early in this year. I think he's somebody to keep an eye on. Rasmus, I don't know if you'd say that he's not on that based on his amateur pedigree, you thought he'd be further along by now, but like maybe it's taken a little longer, but really strong year. And now he's 23 looking at having a PGA Tour card for 2025. Wouldn't be shocked to see him make a little bit of a jump.
I think he's probably penciled in as a Ryder Cupper at this point, like expected.
Potential.
4 years ago, when you first started hearing about the Hojgaards, Rasmus was the name.
Right.
Everybody was like, Rasmus is really good. Nikolai, they weren't sure of. And Nikolai's now bona fide PGA Tour player. Nikolai is an interesting name too for a little bit of a leap. I think he's like that. That's, you talk about playing as a rookie, like playing as a rookie with a twin brother that's playing in Europe that you've played golf with your entire life, and being a part. Like, I have to think that that's going to be a better situation for Nikolai this year, playing on tour with his brother in America. Like that, just generally is worth something. Like. So
contended in the Masters.
Yeah. I listen, like he beat Rory at Royal County Down. That's a bona fide win.
Right.
Like bona fide.
He finished second at the DP World Tour Championship. Like he had 8 top 10s this year.
And I go back to like 4 years ago, everybody's like, watch out for Rasmus. They didn't talk about Nikolai. And maybe like things happen. You go through blips. You struggle with things. You might not be in the right headspace to play great golf. And I think that can, with the sport getting younger and younger, this is just going to be more and more prevalent. Like where like you're 22 and maybe some stuff in your personal life is challenging, or you're going through a tough, like you're not as equipped as someone. Like the sport used to be like you're 35 and you're great. Now it's like you're 25, and if you're not great, it's like, what happened? I remember there was a headline, I can't remember where, it was like, like veteran. They could describe somebody as a PGA Tour veteran, and I was like, he's 26 and been on tour for 3 years. Like that would be a phenom. PGA Tour veteran wins. It's like 26.
It's like Joaquin Neiman, right? Or Sungjae. Sungjae is a great example of that, where he feels like a veteran and he's still young.
Akshay's that way.
Yeah. I'm with you. I just think with Rasmus, he's going to be in the majors next year. That is a big. He's 44th in the world. Like he's never played in the Masters, for example. Like he's going to play in the Masters, so he's going to have the opportunity to show himself a little bit.
I think the other thing that, like, just in general, the European Tour is just a better tour than the Korn Ferry Tour in terms of like the venues they play, and they have like bona fide pros. We saw this last year, and I would not be shocked. It was the first year that they had the 10 spots, and those 10 dramatically outplayed the Korn Ferry players that came in. And there's a multitude of reasons, but like just in general, the 10 spots that are coming from the European Tour are better players than the Korn Ferry Tour. Like they're better golfers. So I expect like there might be Korn Ferry Tour players that are like you're not going to see a Scotty Scheffler come from the European Tour, right? Probably not. But you are going to see just year in, year out, my guess is just better play from those 10 new players than the Korn Ferry players. They play better golf courses. There are a lot of really bad golf courses on the Korn Ferry Tour, and they are effectively putting contests that determine who comes to the PGA Tour.
I think that's going to be really interesting to see how those top 10 performers from the DP World Tour do versus top 10 from the KFT. I know that it's more than 10 who get status from the KFT, but it's going to be really interesting to look at those side by side. I mean, another golfer, not on my breakout list, Andy, but like Ryo Hisetsune, who's the rookie of the year on the DP World Tour 2 years ago, and then had status on the PGA Tour last year. He didn't have a great year on the PGA Tour, but you're talking about somebody in that pipeline now who's only 22. I'm not sure I'd tab him as a breakout candidate, but just kind of interesting within that mold of everything you're saying of DP World Tour potentially being better preparation, and he's got a year under his belt as a PGA Tour rookie. Just another name to keep an eye on.
I think people love, from what I've heard, people love Frankie Sappin.
Yeah, third. He finished third this year on the KFT, right?
Yeah, people like love him. He could be one name from the Korn Ferry. Obviously, we already saw McCarty win. Yeah, I think like there are always going to be young studs that are coming up from the like Kevin Yu would be a good example of another player that I think has another level to go up. That obviously won in the fall, but I think he could continue to get better. I think that's a top 30 player in the world. He's been extraordinary at every level of play.
Top 30. You're going Kevin Yu, top 30 player in the world.
I mean, he's
like
been
a pretty
great.
Bold statement.
He's been great everywhere, like every level. He was great as a freshman at Arizona State. Like he's been awesome. He's an awesome golfer like that. And I think like he's gone basically as quickly from college golf to PGA Tour golf as you can go without having some like ridiculous like run, right? He's just basically just progressed as quickly as you can progress. And I think
I'm not expressing any skepticism. I just think that's an interesting call. It's a big call.
Well, I think like this year, I just like expect him to keep progressing. So like if you think about like the progression, he went from PGA Tour U, I think he was like 3 or 4, immediately to Tour Card. And then, I think he's going, which PGA Tour U got him a Korn Ferry card, which then he parlayed the Korn Ferry card into a Tour card after a full year. Then last year was his first year on tour. He wins in the fall. That bumps him up into a new level of golf. And I think like from there, now like let's just call him a top 70 player on tour. I think from there, the next step is like, I think he could make Eastlake.
I like this call. That's a fun one. I don't think most people would consider Kevin Yu a potential top 30 player next year. So that's a fun one to track.
All right. Do you have one more?
That's it. I had McKibbin, Dunlap, Rasmus, Elvis, and Zalatoris.
All right. So I have Highsmith, Davis Thompson, Akshay, Kurt Kitayama, and Kevin Yu. Real American bias right there.
Seriously.
Can get yelled at. I was thinking about putting Tom Dietrich on mine just because he's bound to win one. He's bound to win.
I'm glad you didn't.
The guy could only rack up so many top 5 finishes in his lifetime. He has to win once.
He shows so many flashes. It just hasn't come together. I worry a little bit about him at 32, about to turn 32, but we'll see.
I mean, we have a University of Illinois product. Every time he's on a leaderboard, it pops in my college chain, and they have even picked up on just we shouldn't even talk about this guy until Saturday. Saturday's over.
He seems delightful. I'd love to see it. That's one I'm a little skeptical of, just based on the track.
Great head of hair. I almost put it on there just to be a homer.
I think that was probably a wise omission.
Do you don't have any Cootie stock as a Texas alum? Pearson Cootie?
I try to separate my roots from. I try not to be biased in that direction. I would love to see either of the Cooties break out. I think they both have a long way to go right now, frankly.
All right. Joseph, look forward to reading more of your stuff in the newsletter on the website, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Andy.
All right. Big thanks to our producer, PJ Clark, for editing and producing this podcast. You know, as I mentioned in the advertisement for our partner Stripe, we have a membership. This is a great holiday gift. If you're already a member, thank you. But if you're a member and you have a golf-loving friend or family member that you think would like Club TFE, we have a gift option. You can go on to thefriedegg.com/membership and you can gift a membership to Club TFE to a loved one, a friend, whatever it may be. This is a great gift where we pour a ton of time and energy into creating a couple pieces of content a week in Club TFE. So if you want to learn more, go to thefriedegg.com/membership. It's $120 a year, and it is really the best way you can support what we do here. We will be back next week with a couple new episodes of the podcast, and I hope you guys are all having a great holiday season.